I used to say, a lot of the times when people used to ask me, what do you do for a living? I used to say, I heal out loud for a living. Now I say, I human out loud, because is it really healing if every single person that you encounter is just having a really real, lived human experience? And as a result, I guess, all of us are healing from something. Some of us are healing from our colleagues. Can I get it? Amen. But it was only yesterday where I fully locked into what it is that I want to speak about, and it is holding the tension. But before I do that, my names are Hermien. Hermien is a Dutch name. So I'm all the way from the Netherlands of Katutura Hospital. My second name is Megameno, an Oshiwambo name that means under God's protection. So I am Oshiwambo, I'm Donga Kwanyama. Third name is Ndapwa, meaning I am complete. And my surname is Elago, which directly translates as lucky. So I am a messenger under God's protection who is complete and lucky in a sentence. I generally introduce myself in that way because I remember a co-facilitator that I worked with. She said she worked with somebody in South Africa the one time, and the woman told her that in their culture, up until your voice has been heard in a space, you have not fully arrived. And I've taught myself just to fully arrive so that, number one, the space knows that I'm here, and so that I know that I'm here too. It would be weird if I didn't, but also to understand that I am holding the space. And today I'm holding the tension because I am a professional speaker. I get paid to speak. As the Toastmasters say, my voice is my invoice. But I'm also a facilitator of development processes. My work lies in belonging. It lies in creating inclusive spaces where everybody, regardless of how they present, regardless of race, gender, age, because age diversity is becoming a big topic now in a lot of corporate spaces, regardless of all of that, that they know that they are truly seen, that they are truly heard, and that they are truly valued. My work also lies in disability and disability awareness. I'm diagnosed chronic depression and ADHD. And I always tell people that my psychologist says, all you needed on top of that was anxiety, and you'd kind of be a triple threat. But I do not identify with any one of those things, because the more you dig, trust me, the more you'll find. You know, because she was even like, I think you might have your toe on the tism, which is her way of saying that you might just be a little autistic too. And I said, you know what? This is drawing the line. I'm drawing the line. And the reason why I'm speaking about holding the tension, and at a conference where there are women and women in tech, I know that the one thing a lot of people are afraid to speak about are the things that almost feel unspeakable. My work initially started in holding processes and conversations around race. That is the one topic most Namibian companies and Namibians in and of ourselves do not want to speak about, just because it's a little bit hairy, it's a little bit grisly, but it's also deeply uncomfortable. But any conversation held in a way that is psychologically safe is absolutely powerful, and it surfaces a lot of wisdom, and it helps us understand the individual experiences of everybody who steps into the room. Because here's the thing, when you walk in to the workplace, we are not AI. We do not lose all those aspects of who we are. We are stepping in with all the things that come with us. And I have had a chronic depressive flare-up over the last 3 weeks. And I was speaking to a friend and I said, you know, the original talk that I was going to give today, it didn't feel really, really honest, because I'm feeling deeply human right now. I'm feeling pretty raw, pretty fragile, and the world feels big and it feels overwhelming. But the other thing that I did tell them as well is I'm going to show up regardless. Because here's the thing, I have done some of my best work felt my worst. And I have learned that none of these things, these identities that I carry, the mental illness that follows me, none of it can take away from the deep impact and the valuable thing that I'm able to do. Because as long as I show up, as long as I honor my commitments, and as long as I do the things that I said I would do, that already means that I'm doing my best work. So I'm always like, after every presentation, I'm like, you know what, the next one will be my best one yet. And it's only my best work because I showed up for it, regardless of how I felt. I was sitting at the back greeting Thursday, and she was like, how are you feeling? And I was like, it's taking everything within me to be here right now, but I'm here. And that is what holding the tension is. How do you show up and do your best when you feel your absolute worst? And and the one thing you'll know when you facilitate development processes, when you're holding something as fragile as conversations around race, as conversations around gender, as conversations that require psychological safety, unfortunately, you do not get a get out of jail free card. Once you've committed to hold the psychological safety of people in a space, it doesn't matter if the world is on fire, you sit and you have to hold that space, because it is so easy to wound people if you're not able to control your internal environment. And when I did facilitation training, and the one thing that surfaced within the group of facilitators is this: it is that the external environment of a workshop or a process is highly dependent on the internal environment of the facilitator. That being able to be a grounded presence, being able to be centered, being able to hold, because you're holding a lot. You're holding the content, you're holding the space, you're holding the room, but you're also holding yourself. And all the different things. And it is not everybody else's to carry. Those things are mine. And whenever I speak to people who work in workplaces and they have struggles with their mental, I call it mental illness, only because there is a difference, and I think it's really important. We all have physical health, but not everybody has a physical illness. In the same way that we all have mental health, but not everybody has a mental illness. And we're able to truly get honest when we talk about the differences between them. But it's not for everybody else to carry. Yes, spaces should have reasonable accommodations, but ultimately, there are so many things that I can do to make sure that when I do show up in the spaces that I'm invited into, that I'm still able to do the very thing that I committed to do. Because I remember really early in my speaking career, I would always I'd wake up and the nerves would override me, and I'd be like, can't I just on the way there get into a car accident? Because then I can just be like, or break my arm. It would be really like wild. And I've spoken to other speakers and they're like, girl, sometimes I'm like, can't I just, you start wishing just so that you don't have to. But ultimately, the power just lies in, regardless of all of those things, is being there. And that is a win. So today, I'm holding the tension. Let me just keep it moving. And holding the tension is speaks to what we carry internally, which means not always feeling our best and still honoring our commitments with depth, care, and with impact. And I'm going to borrow once again from you, Ms. Amelia, where you mentioned that once you do get into those rooms, once you do get into those spaces, because we pray for them, we want those spaces, we want those rooms, we want those platforms. But once you do, honor basically the gift that you have been given to be able to fulfill the very thing that you wanted to. And life does not stop just because you got in there. Life continues. The world is on fire. And yet you still have to honor those commitments. And I'm so grateful that I'm here right now, because this is living it. Literally living it out loud, that regardless of all of those things that you continue you to show up. And it's such a tight line to walk, because it's not just showing up and saying, well, I'm here anyway. It is showing up and being like, I'm going to give my best, and I'm still going to do it as it was required of me, but with greater compassion and with greater empathy for myself, with deep kindness for myself, and hopefully hoping that those around you are able to access empathy and compassion for you too. But here's the wonderful thing about life is that's not even a given. The only one thing that I can control in this world, because there is no, once again, get out of jail free card, the only thing that I can control is only me. So regardless of how many taxis cut me off on the way here, how many people gave me the middle finger, no matter what it is, the emails that are rising, the bills that are due, all of those things, they do not stop just because I'm having a hard time. So I just give them a hard time back. And I just wanted to start from that honest starting point, because I know a lot of the times when we come to events, it is, once again I'm going to borrow, like a co-present, once again I'm going to borrow from Emilia, where you spoke about the fact that motivation is fleeting. In fact, motivation is so, you cannot depend on motivation. Motivation is literally like a cup of coffee. You have it now, you drink it, and then you drive out of here, the taxi cuts you off. Where is that motivation? It is gone. It is absolutely gone. So a lot of the time people will be like, are you a motivational speaker? And I always say no. I'm a professional speaker, and I leave it at that. Motivation is fleeting. And I always want to start from an honest point, and that is why I said, you know, I started where I started, but there are seasons when showing up is not polished. It is really, really hard to not, and that's the beautiful thing that the world has started to embrace, is the gift of imperfection. That none of us can really show up perfectly. That is impossible. And the beauty of being able to step into that. And there are seasons when whatever it is that you are carrying is more than people around you can see. And still, the work matters. Because there are so many other people around you who are depending on you showing up, who are depending on you being able to, a chain. We're literally a chain, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So even in that weakness, you can show up really powerfully. And still, your presence will always matter. So the reality for women is this: it's high capacity is often mistaken for endless capacity. I remember speaking to Nabula Kauluma, she was one of the CEOs for FNB, and is now, I think, head of R&B Africa. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's the case. But she was saying that in a lot of boardroom spaces and in senior management spaces, you might be asked, at a drop of a hat, you need to fly to Joburg for a meeting. And a man just has to make one phone call. And who's that phone call to? His wife. And everything is sorted. Bags are packed, children are taken care of. You do not have to worry about the psychological impact that getting up and going has on your life. With her, the phone calls are, who will be able to take care of my children for me? Who will pick them up from school? How will I get this done? How will the home, who's going to feed? So her phone calls are 10. And then you get there and everybody has to perform at the exact same level. Regardless of, I don't know if my kids are even fed. I don't know if they've even picked up, but obviously, you know, all of those arrangements have been made. And that's the reality for women. High capacity is often mistaken for endless capacity, and that's not always the case. We're expected to deliver, lead, care, adapt, and continue regardless of all the multiple things and all the mental health issues that we might be facing as well, and to perform while tired, while stretched, or quietly depleted. And so these are all the different, you know, aspects that we're dealing with. And yet we still can, because we're all here. I don't know Is there anyone here who's having like a perfect life right now where everything is just seamless? Okay. But maybe there is, and more power to you. But for most people, it's not seamless. We are facing things and we are going through things, and yet we still need to show up. So what it means to hold the tension is to be deeply committed, but also deeply human. And I know, I love AI. It supports me admin is not my thing. People, I'm very human-centered when it comes to my work. So numbers, admin, none of those things are my things. But, I just lost my train of thought. But being deeply committed does not mean you stop being deeply human. It's to pursue excellence without pretending. It is to honor ambition and well-being at the exact same time, and it's staying effective without losing yourself. I remember hearing a story of also somebody in a management position in Namibia who was sitting in a board meeting, and she was chairing that board meeting. And this person had shared the story themselves at an event, but they mentioned how they basically fainted in the meeting. And when they woke up, the person who was next to them was their husband, only to find out that after that, a new chair was basically voted in at the same meeting. The meeting continued without her. The show just continued to go on. And she had lost herself so much in her work, forgetting that should anything happen, they're ready to keep it moving, with or without you. And so it's so important that while you stay effective, you do not lose yourself in all of that. So what self-care is really about when it comes to holding the tension is it's not just indulgence, but it's that too. So the pampering and it's that too, trust me, it's that too. And it's not avoidance, it's not ignoring what's happening in this internal environment. It's not waiting until your body forces you to stop. I wanted to show a video clip of this woman who had burnt out from stress, and she was visibly shaking, unable to speak. And I think that because a lot of people aren't at that level yet, they forget that your body, what's that, the title of that book? The body keeps the score. The body keeps the score, and it's just piling up, and it's piling up. And the push through and at some point, you need to also, find ways for you to rest and to be in spaces in a way that is safe for yourself. And it is wise, honest, and ongoing self-leadership. I continuously have to check in with myself because I cannot afford to explode all over others. And we were facilitating a process on DEI, and the topic of disability came up. And somebody said, we can't afford to have those people in here because what if they just start, with violence and all of these, the othering that happens with anything. Whenever a space has a group that isn't fully, a minority group. And in most spaces, just disability is one of them, but invisible disabilities is now a conversation, which is mental illness. Whenever a space does not have a lot of people get scared. We are afraid of what it is that we do not know. And I have to constantly lead myself as well, but it's understanding that the depression, the ADHD, the toe on the tism, all of those different aspects, they do not have to flow over and impact others. In fact, there's so much magic in understanding that and learning to work with yourself. So what it looks like in practice is reading your capacity honestly. It is adjusting without disengaging. And that is a big one for me because it's so easy to want to shut down and so easy to be like, I'm not getting out of bed, but the show must go on and the world must go on and it's month end next week. And, and there are also a lot of people who are entrusting you to show up because you have because you have made a commitment and you need to honor it. So I've learned to adjust and not disengage. It's not pulling away, It is being there, but being there to the, you know, to to the ability that I can, and in a way that is safe for me. It's prioritizing what matters most, and it is building in rhythms that support clarity, steadiness, and once again that word, resilience. And that rhythm just means having a routine, making sure that I'm communicating with the people that need to be communicated with. Because you know what? There is nothing worse than somebody just going silent on you when you require information from them. I think that is possibly one of the most stressful things. So regardless what it is, what I'm going through, I've learned, just continue to communicate to the ability that I can and hold that ball up there. And sometimes it's a matter of, I'll only be able to submit that tomorrow instead of 30 seconds from now. And that is being honest for me. And mindful self-care on demanding days means pausing before pushing automatically. Because a lot of us step into workplaces and into spaces, and what do we have at the back of our, you know, it is a weapon. And everybody has wounds, and every single person has triggers. I think that the conversation around wounds and mental health has been spoken about enough to understand that all of us carry some level of wound to different extremes and in different measures. But we walk into those spaces, and some people are ready to be triggered, and some people have those open wounds. And it is pausing before just pushing through. It is, what is it that I'm going to say? Because it's, you know, the words that you say and the things that you do, it's kind of like squeezing toothpaste out of a tube. Once it's out, you can't put it back in. So practice the power of the pause. It's returning to what helps you feel grounded and safe. Routine, you know, mindfulness practices. It is letting structure support you. Just very much like a building. If should we have an earthquake right now, or should anything get shaken right now, it's the foundations and the structure of this building that will ensure that we don't go down with it. And I think with human beings, it's exactly the same thing. The foundations that you lay, because it's not what happens in the moment, it's what happens leading up to it. It is who you are all the time. Those practices in the morning. It is how you show up and choosing how you show up in all of those spaces. And it's choosing the next doable step. It is, I do not know if anyone has depression, but at least, you know, there's also situational depression when we go through certain things. Perhaps, you know, grief, or the loss of income, or all of us experience something, and life just feels like it is just too much. And most of the time, it's just being able to do the very next thing. A friend of mine always tells me, just do the next thing and communicate with everybody else who needs to hear from you. So I'm going to be intentional and focused on what it is that I'm doing right here and right now, and all those people who are expecting something from me, communicate with them. Honestly, communication solves 90% of a lot of the stress and pressure and issues we have in spaces. And you know, I was doing some work with one of the ministries, and somebody said, but they always look at me funny. And I asked, have you had a conversation about it? And they said, no. So you are creating things constantly in your mind that do not exist. Communicate, communicate, communicate. It is so important. And sometimes the next doable space is communicating that I'm unable to do this today, but I can have it by when you can have it by. And small practices really carry real impact. I know we hear a lot about sleep, and I know I hear a lot of people who will be like, well, I can function on 3 to 4 hours of sleep. But sleep is, I think, the most underrated productivity hack of all time. And I put it there literally before anything else, because we understand how the human brain works. It's during sleep that your brain is able to make sense of what you've been through the entire day. It's when your brain organizes your experience. It is literally, life is happening right now, and when I go to sleep, my brain goes into admin mode, and it puts everything into ways that make sense. That is why when we're operating with very little sleep, it is so easy to make mistakes. It is so easy to start distrusting. It is so easy to get snappy. It is so easy for so many different things because you're not giving your brain the chance to just catch up with your life as well. So this thing, guard it with your life. Nourishment and hydration, movement and sunlight. And I know we get so much of it in Namibia, but I know my coach told me I think just before 9 o'clock in the morning, that is prime time, getting 10 to 20 minutes of sunlight, and it even helps with your burns. So sunlight is so important. Boundaries. That is the one thing that you just cannot leave out. Boundaries. It's communicating what you can and what you will and will not allow. It is cutting out, perhaps I have a lot of boundaries with myself as well, social media being one of them, how much I allow in, how much I consume, and what it is that I'm consuming, but also allowing people to know, like, until here and no further, how it is that I allow people to speak to me, how much it is that I'm able to say yes to, and there is so much power in saying no to so many different things. There's this book called The Tribe of Mentors. It is written by Tim Ferriss. And he speaks, so he interviewed 400 of the world's best of the best, basically people in different spaces, in religion, in tech, in science, etc., etc. And he asked them all the same 11 questions. But one of the questions that he asked was, what one thing do you think has brought you to this level of success? And 90 to maybe 95% of all of those mentors said, my ability to say no to more and to say yes to only the things that truly apply to, basically to the things that are important, and say no to everything else. And I read a lot of Brené Brown's work because she speaks about, vulnerability in workplaces, and she says that she says no more than she says yes. She says yes like once a week because it's so important to safeguard what it is that you are actually doing. Brief moments of stillness, music, prayer, or breath. Your breath is the very first thing that you take when you arrive here, and it's the very last thing you basically leave the world when you leave. And when I was studying breath work, I realized that every single person dies on an exhale, which means we die letting go of everything else. And the only thing that matters is the things that anchor us. And there's nothing more anchoring than your breath. And one of my favorite quotes is, I can't remember where I saw it, and I still can't remember who to attribute it to, so I'm just going to go with unknown, but it says, I am a sea of little courages. And I was like, that truly applies. The sea of little courages is, once again, it's showing up even when it's really, really hard to do so. It's getting out of bed when everything inside of you wants to stay right there. It is saying no instead of saying yes. It is, it's all those little tiny sea of little courages. And getting out of bed when the weight is real. Asking for help before things unravel. And I think that's the hardest thing. Somebody said, what are the 3 hardest things for anyone to say? It's, I love you, I'm sorry, and Worcestershire sauce. I don't know. That one. But I think before Worcestershire sauce, it is asking for help before things unravel. That is so important. It takes a lot of vulnerability, but once you unravel, you're actually of no help to anyone else and not to yourself either. Saying no when capacity is low, doing the next important thing, not everything. I know this is Women in Tech, but we are not Whitney Houston. I am not every woman. I do not want to be her. But I am the woman who showed up today, and I'm the woman who honors her commitments, and that is all I really want to be. And letting consistency matter more than intensity. Who's ever started like a fitness program? it's the first day, it's like run 10 kilometers, go to the gym, 2 hours. I'm only eating salad. I'm going to 8 hours. Second day, you're like, okay, maybe 2 kilometers. I'll go to the gym tomorrow. Because we focus so much on intensity. It is, I'm going to do this, and then after 2 weeks, where is that fitness plan? With the Worcestershire sauce. So it is rather be consistent, and I don't know if anyone's read the book Atomic Habits, but it's possibly one of the top 5 books that I've ever read. And James Clear speaks about just being 1% better every single day. And 1% better by the end of the year is 365% better. And we all know that. People who start off slowly with, I'm just going to walk to the end of the street, and then I will walk around the block, and then I'll run 1 kilometer, they tend to fare better. It's the story of the tortoise and the hare that we read in primary school. The tortoise only wins because of consistency, and the hare was so focused on intensity. So my invitation is, yes, be ambitious, because one of the things that makes us really human is doing meaningful work. And when I was speaking to somebody outside, I said, it's so important that you continue to show up, because depression cannot hit a moving target. It's really, really hard to hit a moving target. So you just keep moving, you just keep showing up in the best way that you can. And sometimes it is just 1 step, but others you've got the capacity to go 10, then by all means do that. Be brave. But it's so important to be well. Honor this vessel that carries you through this life, and that we're only really able to, what did Jim Rohn say? Take care of your body, it's the only home you really have. And do not build success at the expense of yourself. I've got a cousin who works for the United Nations, and she pushes really, really, really hard. And then she told me about a study that was done because of the level of work that she does. So she's out in South Sudan, so it's already war-torn, and she manages projects out there. And they did a study on people who operate at that level at the UN, and they found that after retirement, the mortality rate is really high. And that's because they spend so much of their life pushing, because the work is so important. And there's just so many organizations and people counting on you that sometimes you forget about yourself. So when they finally do get to rest in retirement, they've just found that the mortality rate it's so high. The body's like, what is rest? And it literally falls apart. And so I think at the end of the day, I wasn't going to do this, but I want to end off with, it's a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, The Man in the Arena. I read this quote quite often because I can get pretty hard on myself. I don't know, where's the choir? I can get really, really hard on myself. Somebody even said, you don't even need to be hard on me, I've got that covered. I've got that completely covered. But I read it pretty often because I remind myself that regardless of what's happening, you do show up, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. You're giving your very best. And I think that The Man in the Arena, that quote truly speaks to that. And I think, what is his name? LeBron James, he has the Man in the Arena embroidered into his sneakers. And I know that a lot of Brené Brown's work is also built on the foundation of The Man in the Arena. And it says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or whether a doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who, at the best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. And basically, it speaks about commitment, showing up, holding the tension, means that you're not, what is it? They call it the cheap seats, where you're like, oh, boo, or, cheering people on. You're actually in the arena. You're actually getting your beep kicked. Yeah, I sorted that out myself. You're actually getting, you're getting hurt. You are getting, but you're in the arena. And I hear a lot of people speak about how I'm not interested in your feedback if you're on the cheap seats. Where the commentary is, where the popcorn is, where the comfort lies. I want to hear from the people who are also getting their beep kicked, who are also in the arena, who are showing up regardless of the endless things, that they are facing and battling. And I think that the amount of women who I see do that countless times, even if it means making 10 phone calls in order to be able to show up, they are in the arena. And I think it's an honor to be in the arena with all of you too. My name is Hermien, and I am complete.